SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Attention sellers, Mid-Delta Auction in Greenwood is taking consignments for the end-of-the-year auction. Friday, December 12th. Get max exposure. Call Will Jeffcoat at 662-299-2414 or visit mdauction.com. Consign now.
Encore presentation of the best of mornings with Richard Cross.
Welcome back, SuperTalk Mississippi. Dave Hughes with you on mornings and we got some really good news that I think is just fantastic, and it's fantastic for the state, and it's definitely fantastic for Alcorn State University, because we found out that band's making a little bit of a trip. Joining us, Dr. Everson Martin, the director of bands at Alcorn State. How you doing, Dr. Martin?
Good morning. I'm up this morning. I'm excited. I'm pumped up. I'm feeling everything right now.
Well, you should be, for crying out loud. Now, talk us through this. For those of you that haven't heard the news, the Alcorn State University Band is going to be marching in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. That is a huge honor to be chosen for that. Walk us through. How did this happen? Did you have to apply? How did this work?
Yes, sir. That's correct. We're going to be performing at this year's Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and it has been a process. You know, it was a lengthy application process, a lot of submitting things, and also an interview process as well. And I knew if I could make it to the interview, I knew I could sell them on Alcorn State. I could sell them on myself, my kids in the state of Mississippi. So it was a lengthy process, but we've come to this point.
Well, and it was a long process, but then getting selected, because this was announced actually first, last year, I think it was?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because they worked
last year, and you know, it's just been so surreal, you know, from first applying, getting the invite, and going through the selection process, then announcing it, then raising the funds, and just all of the preparation. It has been a surreal moment, but I'm excited.
Well, you should be. And that, however, the entire process that led up to you being selected last year, that was just the start of the work, because after that you had to put together what you're going to do on the parade, didn't you? Or are you just doing your regular marching routine? No,
sir. We had to go on and put some things together. I knew I wanted to show it in the best light, and I'm not going to give away what we're going to do it, because I want everybody to tune in. But yes, there was definitely some preparation put into this, some thought put into this. Myself and my assistant, Mr. Brian Sheridan, everybody, the whole team contributed, and the kids bought in. They knew it was going to be a grand stage, so they were excited and pumped up about it. And I think we're going to have a great showing on national television.
Well, I think so, and I think you're going to make Mississippi proud, the entire state. There's no way you couldn't. One key part of this, though, there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of hard work, both starting when you applied all the way to next week at the parade itself. But there was one other key component of this, because last time I checked, it ain't cheap to take a whole band all the way to New York City.
No, sir, it is not.
So you needed a little fundraising help, didn't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it did. And I have to shout out my awesome administration at Alcorn State University. They took this thing head on, and we generated enough funds to be able to make this trip happen. You talk about setting a goal of $500,000. Like you say, it's not cheap. It is not cheap at all. But we set a goal of $500,000, and over the last month or so, we finally reached that milestone. And the crazy thing is, we still have donations coming in. We still have people like, hey, I'm going to contact the university. I want the kids to have a coat. I'm going to contact the university. I want the kids to be warm. I want them to have this and that. So the support from around the state, the support from my fellow colleagues, fellow band directors, that has also been awesome, So it's definitely a moment for Alcorn State University, and I'm excited.
And it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for these kids. Well, when do you guys leave? When are you going to get there in preparation for the parade on Thursday morning?
Okay, we're gonna leave Sunday. And we'll get out there on Monday. And here's the exciting and cool thing. I wanted this to be somewhat of a special moment, a once-in-a-lifetime moment. So I was able to plan out, all the different activities and things that they're going to experience through the week leading up to the parade. So, the kids are going to experience a Broadway show. We're going to do a cruise on the Hudson, visit the Statue of Liberty, take a tour of all of New York. I just wanted them to really, really get an awesome experience in addition to, of course, the performance.
Well, and the thing is, you have to remember for these kids that are in the Sounds of Dynamite band, for most of them, it's the first time they've ever been to New York City, and for a lot of them, it may be the only time they ever go to New York City. So you want them to experience the full thing, if you will, is what you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's what I sold them on. When, like I said, if I could just get to the interview process, and I did, and when they called me, that's what I sold them on. I was like, hey, look, most of my students, they come from small towns. They've barely been outside of their towns. This opportunity, this is something they can tell their kids and their grandkids. Hey, look, when I was a member of the Sounds of Dynamite, we went to New York City and performed for Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I've seen this, I've seen that. That's what I sold them on. That's all I kept thinking about. That was like the driving force behind everything.
We're just a couple of days away from you guys leaving. You dealing with any nerves in the band members right now?
Oh yes, most definitely. Look, I'll let you in on a little secret. It was difficult last week and this week kind of having practice because, some of them, Dr. Martin, my parents, I'm going to be late today. Look, my parents are coming and they're taking me to the store and I'm trying to get this. And, Dr. Martin, I'm going to be a little tardy. Look, I might have to miss this day. Like, they so nervous and they try to make sure they have everything at the same time we're trying to prepare. And also, too, we have our last football game this Saturday before we leave. We play Jackson State. So it's been nerve-wracking. It's been exciting. It's been all of that wrapped up into one. But I'm so proud of the students. They work hard. This has been a great year for us.
It's not enough that you got a football game the day before you leave. No, it's got to be Alcorn Jackson State. It's got to be a big one, right?
You're right. This is the culmination of the football season. The Alcorn Jackson State Capital City Classic, Soul Bowl, whichever you want to call it. This is it. This is the culmination. So, a good friend of mine, the band director at Jackson State, Dr. Roger Little, we talk all the time. And he's excited for me and the band for this opportunity. He's like, hey, we got a heavyweight matchup on Saturday first, right? I was like, oh yeah, we're going to be ready. So it's definitely a weekend.
How are you sleeping right now?
I'm not going to lie to you. I might have got a couple of hours the last few days. It's been, maybe a couple of hours.
Well, your mind just gets to racing because in your position, Dr. Martin, you're kind of the ringleader of this whole thing. You're the conductor of the orchestra, literally. You've got a million details you're trying to keep straight and make sure that you've got everything. Don't worry yourself into being exhausted before you even get on the plane, Doc, is what I'm saying.
I know, right? I know, but, heavy is the head that wears the crown. So I'm equipped for it. It's something that I embrace. It's something that I take on, and I relish in it. So, and the kids know, hey, Dr. Martin makes this ship go. So, and they're really helpful too. They be like, hey, Doc, you took your medicine today. Hey, Doc, you got some rest. Hey, you feeling all right? So, I relish in it. I welcome it. I'll be fine.
This kind of event, this kind of thing happening in the life of a band or any group, you guys, this particular crew that you've got this year, You guys are going to be bonded together for the rest of your lives because of this. I have no doubt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's what I've been talking about throughout the season, like, taking it all in, stopping to appreciate things, and being grateful. Like you said, these students are going to be tied together. They're going to be linked in for a lifetime. Again, this is something that they can tell their kids. So I definitely want them to appreciate the moment and be grateful because it's a special one.
Who's more nervous, your seniors or your freshmen?
The seniors, they the seniors always want something. They always want some type of momentous thing or something to get sent off with, right? They like, we did 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and I think they're more nervous than anybody else. I'm happy for them, though. They deserve this.
Dr. Martin, we could not be more proud to be able to turn on the TV next Thursday morning on Thanksgiving Day and see the Alcorn State University Sounds of Dynamite marching in the Macy's Day Parade. It's a great accomplishment, a great achievement, and a great hat tip to the work that you and all the members of the band are doing over there. I'm sure you've heard this before, but you're going to hear it again now. Good job, Doc. Good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Dr. Everson Martin, Alcorn State University, about to make a big trip. We continue on this next.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next.
Patriotism is a
This is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Just a couple of quick thoughts before we move on to our first guest this morning from the asphalt plant construction controversy in Lafayette County and the Taylor community that I mentioned a second ago. It is worth noting that the technological advances in asphalt production have been such that the environmental impact is said to have been greatly minimized, if not eliminated altogether. That is one argument that you have seen from the development side of things. The other thing is that, and this has been one of the things that has struck me since this conversation began several months ago, and I don't know the political leanings of all the people involved, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, but I do know that historically conservatives have fallen on the side of property rights, owners having the right largely to do with their property. Obviously, zoning comes into effect and all of those things. But those property rights arguments sometimes get pushed to the side when it affects me. It kind of changes the way that argument exists. Like, I am for the idea of property owner rights in theory, and then when it's in my backyard, it's a little bit different. Just reminds me of an old proverb, Lance. I don't want to own all the land. I just want to own all the land that is next to mine.
Yeah, of course. That's a great proverb.
I don't know who said that or when it was said.
Somebody very smart.
Probably so. Chris Cheek joins us now. I think he's a guy that's very smart. He's CEO of Century Care. He has been involved in a number of businesses as a founder or co-founder, almost all of them related to the healthcare industry. And if you have been paying attention, you know that there is a very real conversation about insurance, health insurance in particular, and the rising costs related with it. Significant increases that are coming with healthcare premiums. Some of that conversation is tied to what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now with the government shutdown and ACA subsidies. But also you have Medicare and Medicaid and Medicare Advantage, which is something that is kind of stuck in the middle of all of this that hopefully we can get a little clarity on this morning. Chris, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Richard. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your time this morning. Let's start at the most basic level. People are familiar with Medicare, generally speaking. I think most people are fairly familiar with Medicaid, although sometimes those two things get conflated. But within Medicare, you have Part A, Part B, Part D, which is the prescription piece of this. And then there's kind of Part C, which, as I understand it, that's the Medicare Advantage piece. What is Medicare Advantage?
So Medicare Advantage is, you're correct, it's Part C. It is a Medicare replacement plan. So when you purchase a Medicare Advantage plan, you actually give up your traditional Medicare, and it is replaced by the for-profit company as a Medicare replacement plan. So you actually lose that traditional Medicare benefit. In addition to that, and I'm probably telling you more what it's not than what it is.
Okay. In
addition to that, it's also not a supplement. A lot of people come to us thinking that that they have this Medicare Advantage plan that adds on to their Medicare, but in the form of a supplement, and that they still have Medicare. But you actually do not have Medicare when you purchase a Medicare Advantage plan. You have a Part C Medicare replacement plan, as you have noted.
So Medicare Advantage is an alternative that some who are eligible for Medicare have chosen to use or have as their insurance instead of traditional Medicare?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So as I understand it, there's been a significant growth in Medicare Advantage plans. It's something that has been marketed very aggressively by big insurance companies, private insurance companies over an extended period of time. And at least for a while, this seemed to make sense for a lot of people and is something that a lot of people have. I think I read that maybe for 15 years in a row, they've seen year-over-year growth in the number of these plans that have been purchased. But something has changed. What is that something?
Well, to tell you the truth, I think a lot of it is transparency. The Wall Street Journal did a great job in exposing what these plans really are. They are a form of profiteering on behalf of insurance companies that are basically rationing your health care back to you. And you're giving up all kind of rights when you buy one of these plans. They sound good. You get some trinkets with them. People kind of fall for those trinkets and say, wow, this is nice. I get this gym membership and all this kind of thing. But when you get really sick and really need full health care, it's a different story. There's all kinds of problems getting the coverage you need. There's prior authorizations. And if you talk to any healthcare provider, they will advise you against Medicare Advantage for those reasons. It's hard to deal with, and we're faced with it all the time. And in our nursing homes, and in our hospital, we have people coming to us that would really like to have coverage to be able to be admitted, but they can't because they have this product. So it's a challenge.
I feel like when you get into to an industry that has what seems to be an infinite amount of acronyms, it feels like they're trying to hide something. You got PPOs and HMOs, and one of the things that I read about that seems to be unappealing to Medicare Advantage plans is the ability to choose your provider, your preferred provider, or PPO. Is that accurate that these Advantage plans have made it harder for people to go to the doctors that they've always gone to, or go to the nursing homes or hospitals or specialty care facilities that they want to use?
Yes, that is correct. In fact, not all doctors take Medicare Advantage. To put a fine line on it, the Mayo Clinic doesn't take any Medicare Advantage. MD Anderson takes limited Medicare Advantage, and Vanderbilt takes limited Medicare Advantage, and the list goes on. So there's 20% of the healthcare facilities in the U.S. don't take Medicare Advantage, and that's hospitals, systems, and that's growing. So that is a huge problem, and the ones that do do so reluctantly, if you will.
Yeah.
It is a big problem.
All right, so what is the advantage to Medicare Advantage, if you'll pardon the usage there? Because, again, these are popular. They have been heavily marketed by insurance companies and in a lot of cases pushed. I understand from the perspective of insurance companies, it's an opportunity for them to sell their product and make their money. What's the advantage for patients outside of what you mentioned a second ago? You know, you get a gym membership, or, you know, you get a reduced rate on some medicine along the way.
Yeah. Well, it's cheaper from what I've been told. Now, I'm not an agent. I'm a healthcare executive. So
right.
I've been in the business since 1990 of taking care of people. And, but it is some cheaper, but why people fall for that cheaper product is kind of beyond me. You know, in the hospital business, I tell people, look, we're here to save your life and make your life better, but we're not here to save you a little bit of money. That's just not our job. But we need to be here for the community and for the community to thrive and be successful. So it's very frustrating from our standpoint when people get, you know, hung up on the trinkets, the lower price, and there's even some scenarios where if you have a certain condition that they will even pay you to join Medicare Advantage, which is sort of beyond me. I don't know that I understand how that's perfectly legal, but anyway, our tax dollars is going to pay people so that they can buy the plan. It's a little bit convoluted to me. I don't quite understand that part yet, but anyway, maybe I will one day.
All right. So what about costs of Medicare? You mentioned that Medicare Advantage in some scenarios seems to be less expensive than traditional Medicare. And there is, and by the way, we'll carry this conversation. We got a break coming up in about a minute. I do think there's a misconception with Medicare. For some people, they're like, hey, I worked my entire life and I've been, you know, paying into Social Security, and I've got money that's going to Medicare. And when I retire, hey, my insurance is going to be free. And that is simply not the case, whether it's with Medicare or Medicare Advantage. That's accurate, right?
That's accurate. Yes, that's right. That's right.
And Medicaid is the program that is more for low income individuals and those who can't afford Medicare. All right. We'll pick this conversation up on the other side. I want to tell you about a website that Chris and his companies have developed, keepyourmedicare.com. It answers some of the questions about Medicare Advantage, shows some of the detriments that exist. We'll talk about what people need to be doing as we have made it into open enrollment. What's the answer for you going forward? Chris Cheek, CEO at Century Care, is my guest. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next.
This holiday,
This is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
yeah, now you don't know, Lotta, you don't know, Willa, you don't know my
Glad to be with you on this is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Chris Cheek is my guest. He is the CEO at Century Care, has worked in the healthcare industry since, as he said earlier, around 1990. And we're talking about rising insurance premiums, rising costs in the healthcare industry, and Medicare Advantage plans, and the things that you need to be aware of when you are looking at insurance. A couple of things that we didn't mention. We were kind of talking about different terms, Medicare A, Medicare B, Medicare D. Medigap, which is this gap insurance that is available for people to purchase when they retire. Chris, some people simply either don't have a need for it initially after retirement, or they think they don't want to or can't afford to spend the additional money on Medigap coverage. I've heard and have been told that it becomes more difficult to get and more expensive to get if you don't get that as soon as you are first eligible for it. What is the role of Medigap?
So Medigap is really important. So what we tell people instead of a Medicare Advantage plan is we tell them focus on the 3 M's. The first M is Medicare, which is Medicare.gov, and that's your Part A and your Part B. The second one is your Medigap policy. The second M is Medigap. It's also called a supplement. You have a 6-month window, more or less, once you start once you pay for Part B, you have a 6-month window where you can get a Medigap policy or supplement. And you're guaranteed to get that policy. You pick the one you want, and if you do it inside that window, you're guaranteed issue without any underwriting concerns for healthcare. So you're covered. You got it. And the third M we tell people is their medications. That's their Part D plan. I know you didn't ask about that, but I'm just trying to present this acronym to help people out. So it's Medicare, Medigap supplement, and then your medications with your Part D plan. It's important to note relative to this Medigap policy, though, that if you go the Medicare Advantage route and you decide, I want to go back to traditional Medicare, and you have become ill and not getting the services that you want, you will likely give up your opportunity to get a supplement or a Medigap policy because you have become uninsurable and it will likely be too expensive for you. So one thing you got to realize is that once you get Medicare Advantage, you may lose that opportunity to get that Medigap policy that you just referenced if you're outside that guarantee issue window. So it's something to really understand and know about and make sure that you're making the right decision.
Is the cost of Medigap guaranteed, or can that change year to year as you go through open enrollment each year? Once you have initially obtained that Medigap policy?
Once you've obtained that policy, that cost is going to, I don't think it's stagnant, but it's not like, if you get it later, it's going to be more expensive. But if you get it on time, if you will, in that 6-month window, it's going to be much more affordable. I guess what I was, exact cost, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was getting at is, let's say I'm 68 years old and I retire and I go into Medicare. I don't know exactly what the age number is where you transition to Medicare. And I get that Medigap initially, and let's say it cost me, I don't know, $75 a month for Medigap coverage. 3 years from now, when I'm 71, is that $75 Medigap going to now cost me $125 or $200? But you're saying don't know exactly how that works?
I don't know exactly what that number is. Okay. But what I am saying is that if you wait to get that and you think you're going to go back and get it at a later time outside that guarantee issue window, that's when it gets terribly expensive. Okay.
What about people that are changing? So I mentioned open enrollment. That is going on right now. I think started last week. And if you are in Medicare, do you have the ability to leave Medicare to go get a Medicare Advantage plan? If you're in a Medicare Advantage plan, can you leave that program and go to Medicare or back to Medicare in some cases?
Yeah. You could leave Medicare and go to Medicare Advantage. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, given what's on our website and what you can see in the news every day. But coming back the other way is difficult. You probably will have trouble getting a supplement. So you'd have to be careful.
And the supplement is the biggest thing. Right? You talked about the importance of that supplement because that's the part of the policy that covers big expenses. Is that the best way to describe that?
No, actually, the Medicare Part A covers the big expenses. Okay. The supplement wraps around your Part A, covers the copays and deductibles. And listen, I know people who have had horrible cancer episodes and had a traditional Medicare with a supplement, zero bills. Won't happen with Medicare Advantage. Won't happen.
Okay.
All kind of copays and things that pop up. So
what are the questions?
Very important to understand that.
Yeah. What are the questions that people need to be asking, whether it's a benefits manager or, if they're getting ready to retire, and maybe work for the state or for a university or a hospital system, and there's somebody usually that can kind of help you with all of the options that you're going to have to, all the choices that you're going to have to make as you transition into retirement. What are the questions that people need to ask?
I think the one thing that we have in our healthcare system that's problematic is this whole thing is full of conflicts of interest. So you've got to wade through who are you talking to that's conflicted in what they're telling you. So you have to keep that in the back of your mind. But we have to rely on agents to help us with to get a supplement and a deep. If you want to go down the road of a Medicare Advantage plan and take a look at that, they sell those as well. So they handle a lot of those a lot of those issues, a lot of those questions. But the first thing I want to know, first thing I'm going to do, and my wife will start this process next month. And the first thing she's going to do is look at a supplement policy and a Part D plan. And you go to an agent to get those done. But that's the first thing to work out, in my opinion, is getting those two things taken care of. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's just like it feels like people need to be educated.
Yes.
You don't know what you don't know sometimes, and you don't even know exactly the right questions that you need to be asking. Again, the website is keepyourmedicare.com. There's a lot of helpful information that kind of gives you the tools to make the decision that's best for you. This conversation that we've got going on in Washington right now about ACA subsidies, government shutdown, cost of insurance going up, does that have anything to do with what we're talking about now with Medicare, Medicare Advantage, or is that for younger people that aren't eligible at all for these programs?
Yeah, more the latter. It's for people that are on the marketplace.
Okay.
And look, it's important that we all have insurance, and so they need to work through that and try to. I'm just a big fan of everybody having insurance and doing your responsible thing. And I think we all have we should all work hard, and we should all provide our insurance and pay our property taxes and pay our taxes so we can all live, peaceful lives, right? And so I hope they get through that, and let's work through that.
Let me ask you this question based on some of the questions that we've got. We've gotten a lot of messages on the C Spire text line that say, hey, Medicare Advantage is a sham. You don't want to go down this road. But there are also some people that have said, okay, why is Chris advocating for this? How does this benefit him? So I'll just simply ask you that question.
Good question.
Why is it that you are advocating for people, hey, stick with Medicare, don't go down this road of Medicare Advantage?
It's real simple. I'm a healthcare provider, and that's all I've done in my career is providing healthcare to people. And I've seen people in our nursing homes and in our hospital crying because they thought they had Medicare. And all they had was a Medicare Advantage plan and an old Medicare card. And I've just seen enough people crying and begging for us to take them because their Medicare Advantage company said, no, we're not providing. And I just checked on somebody a little while ago that they were an elderly man. He needed a skilled stay after hospitalization, and that his Medicare Advantage company turned him down. And my good friend who's a doctor tried to admit a lady to our hospital the other day with pneumonia. This guy's a 40-year internist. Tried to admit her to the hospital, and the Medicare Advantage plan said, we think she needs to go home with oral antibiotics. You know what? She went home with oral antibiotics and died 2 days later. So I've just heard all of it I can take. And I don't make a nickel off of this website. I don't make a nickel doing what I'm doing now. I'm not a broker. I'm not doing this commission. I'm strictly doing this to try to tell the world, be careful. This is a huge problem. It is the biggest financial threat to our healthcare system is Medicare Advantage. The biggest financial threat to our healthcare system. And I'm not the only one saying that. Just look at the Wall Street Journal. They printed it all over there.
There is, if you are a subscriber to the Wall Street Journal, a really good story that came out, I think it was just last week, that really identifies some of the issues with Medicare Advantage and spells it out pretty clearly. Chris, thanks so much for your time this morning, for shedding some light on this issue, and maybe we can talk again down the line.
I'd look forward to it. Thanks, and it's a privilege meeting you. I appreciate it very much. You have a wonderful day.
You as well. Chris Cheek, he's the CEO at Century Care. He's been in the medical field for a long time, and hopefully that shines some light on this issue that is affecting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans, seniors who are sometimes vulnerable health-wise.
More of the best of mornings with Richard Cross next.
This is where the story of your state gets told each day. We're proud to cover the Magnolia State like nobody else. SuperTalk.
Family is an encore presentation of the best of mornings with Richard Cross.
Well, I done got old. I can't do the things I used to do.
Pleasure to be with you this morning. SuperTalk Mississippi. It's mornings with Richard Cross. Glad to have you along for the ride. Going to go to the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Again, 601-879-4395. I want to, before I read these messages, I asked directly Chris the question that some of you are asking. What's his angle? Why is he advocating for Medicare Advantage? What's in it for him? I asked him directly, and he was more than happy to answer that question. He has been in the healthcare world for a long time. He explained why he was advocating for Medicare, traditional Medicare, as opposed to Medicare Advantage programs. And I think he was pretty straight up about it. Now, as is the case with most stories, you got options here. There are two sides to this story. One, this one says, I'm just going to read the message. And again, here's what I would encourage you to do. Make the decision that is best for you. Just make sure that you understand all the realities of your insurance decision in retirement. Here's one message. This guy that is bashing Medicare Advantage plans has no idea what he's talking about. You need to have somebody as a host that can explain how an Advantage plan works. I'm an agent, and I've helped a lot of people with Medicare Advantage plans, and they are completely happy with them. This doctor, by the way, he's not a doctor, has plenty of money to pay co-insurance, co-pays, and everything else that goes along with having original Medicare. This is not fair to the senior citizens that are listening to this on the radio. Medicare Advantage plans are not for everyone, and neither is having original Medicare for everyone. Okay, but I would say here, as you explained in your message, you do have a vested interest in this. Chris told us that he doesn't have a vested interest. He's not an agent. He's not a broker. He's somebody that works in the healthcare industry, development and management of hospitals, nursing homes, and assisted living communities in multiple states, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying you identified in your message that you are an agent that sells Medicare Advantage plans, and everything that he's saying is wrong and he has no idea what he's talking about. You may have tons of idea about what you are talking about, but to say that somebody else doesn't know what they're talking about when they've been in the industry for 35 years, that strikes me as a bit disingenuous as well. Some of you asked what the website was that we were talking about. It's called keepyourmedicare.com. Here's another one. Terrible segment on Medicare. Biased and slanted information. Please try to get someone on the show that is an advocate for the consumer.
It's always about your budget, your time horizon, the flexibility of your income. Yes. I mean, nothing is ever going to be one glove fits all hands. I mean, I spent a few years doing this stuff and wrote a lot of health. The ACA really put a stop to a lot of that for most of my customers because we were, writing individual health care for families and, using golden rule and, very inexpensive but high quality coverage. So, a lot changed, and what I will say is that it's different for everyone. You have to sit down and go through the options. This is not anything anybody ever likes to do. It's like writing a will. You're getting to that point in life where you got to. 100%. It's not fun, okay?
I mean,
but
even
no one
is within our company, when October 1st hits and we get the email on September 15th that says open enrollment starts October 1st, you've got to go in. Even if you're not making any changes and
still got to go
through all the elections and all of the enrollment.
And MWG makes it so easy for us. I mean, it could be so much more difficult. I did it when it was way more difficult. So MWG has really made it easy. But I mean, Medicare Advantage plans they're basically a plan that replaces the original Medicare Part A and B.
Yes.
It often includes a Part D prescription drug coverage and some other stuff, make dental and this. But I mean, it's really case sensitive. I mean, it really is.
Let's grab a couple more of these messages. Advantage companies require that medical providers get treatments authorized while Medicare just writes a check. The argument goes both ways because some medical providers simply choose not to accept Advantage plans to not have to get prior authorization, ensure they get paid. Medical necessity isn't required for Medicare and supplements. I will tell you this. We have gotten several messages from healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, people in hospital settings, who have said during this segment, we have all kinds of problems with Medicare Advantage plans.
And a lot of that is how they're sold up front. And in most cases, that is generally the bigger issue is communicating what you're selling to those that are buying it. Yeah. And they're unclear, and they buy it, and then they don't understand what they've purchased because it's complicated.
Ask any hospital employee or clinician that deals with insurance, and they all say stay with straight Medicare. They know what pays and what doesn't. Somebody says the responsible thing is to be healthy even into old age. Yeah, that's what we all want. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way. I think we hit on another passionate topic where people are on one side or the other. Be sure to do your own research.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next. An encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Country music singers have always been a real close family. But lately some of my kinfolk have disowned a few others than me. I guess it's because I kind of changed my direction. Lord, I guess I went and broke their family tradition. Get on me, want to know, Hank, why do you?
Oh, yes, Lance doing his thing just like he always does. We're glad to be with you on Mornings with Richard Cross. This hour of the show is brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you're not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They can provide a full range of employer services plus a custom plan that fits you. Give them a call today, 601-206-7966, or go to MWGEmployerServices.com. Thanks for joining us. We will jump into a conversation now with Grant Cowan, who is the CEO and executive founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. And Grant, just so you know, this is a conversation that certainly elicits passion when we talk about school choice, when we talk about education freedom, and it also elicits text like...
hey, I put a new fuse in the text line, so we're good.
Did you?
Yeah, we're good to go.
It's going to fire up. Where is it? This was a good one. Here, I've lost it. Basically said, here comes the super lobbyist to talk about half-truths. Why don't you get somebody to talk about the other side of the issue as well? I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of the message. We're talking about all of the sides and all of the issues and all of the questions related to school choice and to education freedom. We know, Grant, that this is going to be a big topic for the legislature in 2026. Speaker of the House, Jason White, has made that abundantly clear, as has the governor. We talked a lot about it with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann a week or so ago. I appreciate you coming in. Good morning.
Well, good morning. I'm glad to be here. And it should elicit passions because we're talking about our kids. We're talking about our communities. We're talking about our state, talking about our schools. These are things that really matter. And so passion is good. It's certainly good in talk radio.
There's no question about that. At Empower Mississippi, this has been something that you've been looking at and studying and talking about really since the beginning. So yeah, just kind of to be clear as we start things off, your position on the idea of school choice in Mississippi. I think we'll talk a little about surrounding states, but I'm more concerned about our state right now than what they're doing in Louisiana or Arkansas or Tennessee or other places.
Sure. My position is every child is unique, and there ought to be education options so that parents can match their kids to the best setting for their needs. I am agnostic about type. So I'm not pushing private schools. I'm not pushing charter schools or traditional public or magnet over a different type. I really think education providers and educators can thrive in lots of different settings. But the best opportunity for our kids in Mississippi to get a world-class education, in my view, is a setting where there are robust options. And that puts us in a position where education service providers, teachers, principals of all stripes are focused on meeting the needs of kids so that they keep them there. And I think that would produce the best outcomes. But I also approach this with a realization that there's a lot of kids that are already in a great setting. And maybe that's because they have chosen their neighborhood public school and they moved to that community because of their neighborhood public school and they're really proud of those schools. Maybe it's somebody who has already chosen a private school and they're really proud of those schools. So we approach this with a first do no harm. We don't want to do anything to disrupt where kids are already getting a great education. And we're really not focused on those kids where it's already working. The focus of this is all about kids who are falling through the cracks, whose parents know they need something else and they just don't have the options. I think there are things we can do to address that.
And Grant, that strikes me as a fairly non-controversial position or non-controversial take. I think regardless of where you fall in the school choice education freedom debate, most people would say we want the best outcomes possible for kids, and we want kids to have the opportunity to get the best education possible. But then the controversy comes in when you start talking about funding and how do you get to the finish line and, what schools should have to take what kids and what kids in certain districts should have the opportunity to move from one to another. It is interesting to me when it seems like there's a line of delineation between what the Speaker of the House and maybe the governor want and what the Senate appears to want. But one area that there does seem to be agreement is the idea that kids in failing or D-rated districts should have the opportunity to move to more exceptional districts if it's feasible, right? I mean, if they can get there, if the parents can get them there. Do you see that as an area that the two sides agree on?
Oh, I think, yes, there is agreement there, but I think that doesn't go nearly far enough. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, as the accountability model has been inflated since COVID, and some of that is the fact that our kids are genuinely doing better, and some of that is the model's inflated. Out of like 140 school districts, we only have 3 districts in the entire state rated D or F. That doesn't mean there's only 3 places in the state where our kids are not thriving. There are plenty of children across the state who are in a range of rated districts, some high performing, some low performing. That's sort of assuming that only kids in D or F rated districts need choice. Assumes that we're going to look at the state based on averages and say, hey, if most kids are doing well in A, B, or C rated districts, we don't need choice. And again, the purpose of choice is not about painting with a broad brush. It's about giving individual kids and individual families opportunity. So, yeah, I think that's probably the lowest common denominator, that I think everybody is in agreement that if you're stuck in a low-performing school, you should have choice. And look, I'm thrilled. That's actually progress. That's more alignment than we have seen in a long time. It just didn't go far enough, and we ought to give options to a lot more than just kids in these 3 low-performing districts.
What about if you take it a step farther and you say, district-to-district movement is something that we are okay with? I've been having some conversations, and I think the number is about 75% of the districts in the state, and I may be off by a few percentage points one way or the other, have some level of movement that is allowed. from district to district, whether that's because a parent teaches in one district but they live in another district, or it's just something that they allow on a case-by-case basis. If that became 100% across the board, the legislature said if you want to move your child from one district to another for whatever reason you deem necessary, and the receiving district has the capacity to take that child in, then it's okay. Is that maybe the first important step that we get to in your mind?
I think that would be an incredibly helpful first step. Because, again, what we're talking about is we have great schools. We don't have universal access to those great schools. And so that is, years and years ago. I mean, Mississippi has long had a open enrollment cross-district transfer policy that does technically allow families in, to your point, most districts, a process. The problem is that process is incredibly cumbersome, and it often requires that you be politically connected in the district you're trying to leave and the district you want to come to. And either one can veto it for cause or no cause. It truly can. It's entirely up to them. It's an ambiguous process, and it literally requires that you know people and can pull political strings. So the current process, while does technically allow cross-district transfer, it's just not nearly open enough, and it's kind of a political system.
There certainly is a financial piece to this, and we will get into that. And the big financial questions, one, and what we were just discussing, if you live in, I'm just going to use close to me because it's relevant to where I live. If you live in Panola County and you want to send your kids to the Lafayette School District or the Oxford School District, but you pay your local taxes in Panola County, what does that do for Lafayette or Oxford in terms of tax revenue? That's a question that people have. Also, does the money follow if you were allow a public to private transfer? That's one of the big things that people are talking about. We'll get to that coming up next with Grant Callen, founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next. Hello. This is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
You're just a Coca-Cola cowboy. You got an Eastwood smile and Robert Redford hair.
Good to be with you this morning. It is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Grant Callen is my guest, founder and CEO at Empower Mississippi. We get this message on the C Spire text line. Districts will have capacity, a word I used a little while ago, for good students and athletes. This weakening schools that are not great schools. I tend to think that that's a message that kind of fits the narrative that you're looking for as opposed to the reality. Grant, this is a question that I don't know has a clear answer. How much movement would we actually see? This is not the public to private conversation, but if public to public was open, where it could happen anywhere in the state of Mississippi, as long as the receiving school had the capacity, had the space to take new students in, how much movement would we see district to district?
I think it would be relatively small. But again, it would be the kids who are on the bubble, who are struggling or thinking about like just where it was not the right fit. I think they would be the ones to move. It was interesting. I looked at some polling recently, and when asked nationally, why do families switch schools? That was the question. Why do families switch schools? It's not what we spend most of the time talking about, which is academics and NAEP scores and things like that. The number one thing that parents across the country said, it was excessive stress, anxiety, or bullying. So sometimes parents just want your kid to be in a situation where they're safe. They're not, and maybe they find themselves in a situation with their child is being bullied, or it's not the right fit for any number of reasons, and it's stressful, and a change of setting is necessary. And I think it would be relatively few, particularly because it has the receiving district has to have capacity to take those students. So what we're really talking about is currently both districts have to approve it. We're talking about saying now we would end the process where the sending district has to approve a child to leave, and simply the receiving district would have to decide if they have capacity to serve that student. So in the end, I think it would be relatively small, but it would be incredibly meaningful for those kids that exercise the choice.
We can talk about all of this in a utopian world where it's just like, oh yeah, we want what's best and we'll allow people to move freely, and it's all about getting what is best. But there is a financial component to this.
Sure.
There's a financial component for local communities. There's a financial component for the schools themselves. And there's a financial component for the state of Mississippi, and the way that it allocates money for education in Mississippi. So to me, there are two really big financial questions, and then probably some offshoot questions that go along with it. First, what I mentioned before the break, if you are in neighboring counties and you pay local taxes to the county in which you live, but then you start sending your child to a school in a different county, a neighboring county, the local tax money that you're paying that goes to city and county schools would continue to go to the schools in the county in which you live. And there's a question about, well, what about the money for the neighboring county where you're sending your school? Is that a big enough issue? Is that a big enough concern? Are there enough students that is a reasonable concern? Or is that kind of a canary in the coal mine argument?
Well, I think it's something we should address, but when you think about the way it currently works, again, we've had a district transfer policy on the books for as long as I can remember. It currently works where the state funds students wherever they are, so that money follows the students. In the same way, if you moved your residence from one community to the next, the state is going to fund you at the district where you are currently enrolled. So that money is going to follow the child. The piece that doesn't follow is the local dollars. And districts have handled that differently, but in most cases, today they charge a tuition. And that might be $500, it might be $1,000. I think the most I've seen is they will charge $2,000.
$2,000. I think that's the highest number that exists right now in Mississippi.
So what we're suggesting, and what we've heard lots of people talking about, is there's nobody suggesting that the local dollars should follow a child to a different district. We simply think the state average cost of a student should follow that student to the next district, and then depending on what the legislation looks like, there's a couple of different ways to handle that. You could say, well, districts are still allowed to charge a tuition. The problem is that's going to price out some kids who even can't afford $1,000 or $2,000.
Sure.
So last year, the Speaker of the House, Jason White, their proposal coming out of the House, set up a state pot of funds that would be used to help offset that cost. So districts could say, hey, we're going to accept this student. We're going to accept this a little bit extra money out of the state pot in order to make up for the local dollars that are not following. So we spend a lot of time talking about...
And just to use real numbers on that, let's just say that the difference in what it costs to educate on a per-child basis, let's just say it's $3,000 or let's say $5,000 different between what the state allocates and what the local city or county makes up in terms of difference. And you charge $1,000 tuition. So you're talking about a $4,000 difference. If one school district were to accept 20 new kids, you're talking about $80,000, in which that district could then go to the state and say, hey, this is where we're falling short. We would like to apply for these funds that are available to make us whole? No,
what I'm saying is I think the way it was proposed last year is this pot of funds would replace the tuition model. So you would not charge a tuition. You would go to the state instead. So if you think about every school is funded with a combination of dollars of federal, state, and local dollars, the state portion is the largest piece. And it varies what the local contribution is. So the important thing is that the state portion follow, and there are a variety of proposals for how you make up for the local. But currently, if a child moves out of Madison County into Clinton School District, the state is going to fund that child at Clinton, not Madison anyway. Or if the child leaves the state, if they leave Madison County and they go to Alabama, the state is no longer going to fund that child in Madison like they would have before. So that piece is kind of already happening, and I don't understand why people are so concerned when we do that already in Mississippi as people move their residents. We're just trying to create a path so they don't have to move their residents.
I think the bigger financial concern, though, is the question of students that are currently in public schools moving to private schools, and the question about whether or not, if we say the money follows the student, does the money that the state is allocating for a student that currently is in a public school going to a private school follow that student to the private school? And when you talk about universal school choice, there are a lot of people that assume that money would follow. To me, though, that creates a really significant issue. What do you do with the kids that are already in private schools?
Sure.
That number is about, I think it's about 40,000.
Correct.
I think you've got about 25,000 students that are currently in MAIS private schools, and then about another 15,000 that are in some other sort of religious or parochial or whatever school that doesn't fall under MAIS. So if you're talking about 40,000 students at between $6,000 and $7,000 a year, you're talking about another $400 million that the state says they don't necessarily have to push into education without moving money from somewhere else.
Well, there's a couple of things I would say. This is an important point. First of all, the purpose of all of these conversations about school choice is not about helping kids that are already in private school. I think they need to be eligible, but I think they need to be at the back of the line after everybody else has been helped. So keep that in mind. The first goal is to help kids who are currently struggling somewhere who need another option. So, for instance, in Arkansas, they did I believe it was a 5-year phase-in. Kids that are already in private school were at the back of the line. So that might have been year 3 or year 4. And then they started with low-income students before everybody got it. So we're talking about focusing on kids elsewhere first. But then once you get to students that are already in private school, there's no state in the country that has had anywhere near 100% participation. So EdChoice, a national school choice organization, looked at Mississippi and did a study, I believe it was 2 years ago, came out in late 23, and they estimated, based on what's happened in other states, we would see about a 21% take-up rate in that first year. So 21% of 40,000 kids in private school is much less than what you're talking about, sort of funding everybody. So we look at if you were to fund 40,000 kids in private school, and even if you included the 23,000 homeschoolers, which I don't know whether this program will include homeschoolers or not, you're talking about 13,000 kids, maybe $90 million. So and again, that's getting at the back of the line after everybody else, but $90 million is nowhere near $500 million, which is the number I keep hearing tossed around.
Yeah. We will continue this conversation with Grant Callen on the other side of the break. He's founder and CEO of Empower Mississippi. We're back with you right after this.
I remember the 35 sweet goodbyes. When you put
more of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross. Next,
Vans Outdoors,
an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Get down the bow, kick off your shoes, and you throw them on the floor. Dance in the kitchen till the morning light. Louisiana Saturday night.
Lance, we may have created something that we have to further evaluate.
Yes, sir.
We got a message a little while ago said the country music is making my mouth water. I'm icing down the cold beer right now.
Well, I had to play some Mel McDaniel. I'm country fried for you, so get some country fried steak today, too, with your beer.
Hey, go ahead and ice it down. There you go. Grant Callen is with us. He's founder and CEO at Empower Mississippi. I think ultimately where we need to end up today as part of this conversation, because there can be these hypothetical conversations like, well, it could work like this and it might work like this. And we get down to a question of, okay, but what's the legislature going to do? And we'll get there in just a second. But I do want to ask you one other question. If we're talking about universal choice, I said two other questions that are tied to the financial piece on this. If we're talking about universal choice where public money, public tax dollars would follow students, the state portion would follow a student to a private school. Two things that strike me as really, really big issues here. Number one, is that immediately going to cause the private school to raise its tuition amount by the amount that the public money would equate to? So if, just using round numbers, if it cost $10,000 to go to private school X and all of a sudden there was an additional $6,000 available for a student transferring in, would that school take its tuition to $15,000 or $16,000?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, but I would say private schools exist to serve students, and many of them have many open seats and would love to serve more students. So, as I talk to private school leaders, they're baffled by this question because we're sort of treating them like they exist for profit. The vast majority are nonprofit. And they don't exist to serve students. They want to serve kids, and many of them, particularly in rural areas, would love to serve more, and they have plenty of room. I've heard the number tossed around by private school leaders that there's something like 30,000 or 40,000 empty seats in private schools today that they could add just under current facilities. So there is tremendous room in our private schools that they could serve more kids, which is what they're in the business of doing and want to do. So,
But be that as it may, you don't think that they would raise tuition commensurate with the amount of money coming from the state?
I think the vast majority would not, but it's a marketplace. It's the question of, like, could grocery stores raise prices to price out people with food stamps? Sure. But they exist to sell groceries, and if you have a coupon – so maybe you would have a few that would raise their prices, and it's a marketplace. And if they – as soon as they got out of the price range of what is affordable for most families, somebody's going to see that as an opportunity and create a low-cost private school that is affordable. So you already see that kind of marketplace in the private school landscape as you have some of the big players – are all extremely expensive private schools, but those are like 3 or 4 in the state. And you start to see even in the metro area, there's some great private schools that have come in and said, look, we're not going to be $15,000, $16,000 tuition. We want to be in at that $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 range because we want to be an affordable, high quality option. So it's a marketplace. And the last thing we want to do is sort of like rent control in New York where you put a ceiling on what schools can do. Let the market work, and you're going to see providers adapt to meet the needs of students, and that's the purpose of choice.
And then the other part is if public money goes to private schools, do private schools then become beholden to the same testing standards and teacher standards that public schools are beholden to? Absolutely not.
They are fundamentally different entities, and there's a long tradition of this in higher education where we use Pell Grants to allow students to attend, in some cases, a private school. I mean, I went to Belhaven University for my undergrad and used a Pell Grant to help afford it. And that Pell Grant didn't allow the federal government to tell Belhaven they couldn't be a Christian university or they couldn't hire Christian professors or they had to take some kind of national test. There are certain accountability minimal standards that'll be there. And again, all of that comes down to the devils are in the details, and I don't know what this package will look like. Many states have said that in an education scholarship account program like this, an ESA program, you would require every private school to take a nationally norm reference test and submit those test scores to the state. That's what we support. Most private schools already offer a nationally norm reference test, so you're not adding an undue burden. It would simply allow them to take something they're already doing and submit those results to the state.
But most of those tests are different than the tests that are being administered by public schools, right?
Absolutely. And they have and that's a feature, not a bug, that we have a diverse buffet of options across the state. Look, we've long supported a change to the way we hold public schools accountable. I'd love to see public schools allowed to offer different tests so that they could adapt and have different approaches in the way they teach, and they emphasize different things. There was a school district up in Corinth that took this approach a couple of years ago that had a university model curriculum, and they took, I guess it was a Cambridge model, and they took a different assessment. So I think that's a good thing. That allows the schools to adapt and meet the needs of their students. But here's the important thing. If you were to require a bunch of onerous requirements on private schools, if you were to say they have to take the state test, you would see the best private schools would just opt out, and the lowest performing private schools would say, well, we need the money, and so they would probably participate. That's what we saw a decade ago or 15 years ago in Louisiana. They had a school choice program that put a lot of onerous regulations on private schools that were ill-conceived. And you created this two-tiered system where you had good private schools did not participate and the less good ones did. And so I think we have to be vigilant that we recognize public schools are public, private schools are different. We're not talking about taking public dollars and appropriating them to private schools. We're talking about giving kids a publicly funded scholarship so they can shop around and find a setting that works. It's funding students, letting the money follow, and then giving private schools their independence so they can create great outcomes for kids.
I understand your perspective on that. I'm just not sure that I agree. You use the word onerous in terms of, testing and accountability, but if you start taking public tax dollars that are associated with a certain student and reallocating those to private schools, I feel like you've got to have a level of accountability that proves that students are being taught what the state says they're needing to be taught if they're receiving state money.
Look, accountability is an interesting word that gets tossed about in education forever.
Okay.
And I would say the system we have today is very unaccountable. Accountability, in my mind, conjures up the ability to affect change if the outcomes are not what we want. And in many parts of our state, you have kids that are in a school that has failed them. If we're just talking about schools, you have schools that have been failure factories for 50 years, and we still have students that are assigned to those schools that have to go. That is radically unaccountable. So the best accountability mechanism in education has always been walkaway power. If your needs are not getting met, if kids are not being prepared for life, you can go somewhere else where they will. So that's the first piece, is these programs are accountable to parents because parents they have the primary responsibility to make sure their kids get a great education and are prepared for life. But number two, again, we're not talking about allowing funds to go to anybody who opens a school in their garage and says it's a school. There would be some basic measures, and we support saying schools have to be accredited. And that's a rigorous process. There are a number of different either in-state or national accreditation organizations that are a rigorous process. And we think
to use your example from Belhaven earlier, Belhaven is accredited to be able to be a college or university.
Correct. And there is oversight through that accreditation process. But again, the market is the best form. Belhaven goes out of business if they don't produce great graduates that are prepared for life, that are ready to go. That's the accountability mechanism that's most effective.
Grant, I very, very rarely keep a guest for an entire hour. If you've got time, I want to hold you over because I think there's one incredibly important piece to look at here before we finish up. If you've seen the musical Hamilton, Lance will laugh at me for making this reference. There is a line in one of the songs there where George Washington is saying, to Alexander Hamilton, you don't have the votes, you don't have the votes. Are the votes there? Because absent the votes, are we wasting time with this conversation?
It's a great question.
We will get to that on the other side of this break. Grant Callen from Empower, Mississippi.
Mama pajama rolled out of bed and she ran to the police station. When the papa found out,
more of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next.
This is where the story of your state gets told each day. We're proud to cover the Magnolia State like nobody else. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Polyupa, Mississippi. An encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Listen, give me 5 minutes. We're going to put some moves on that mother. I'll meet you at Ole Miss. Well, you better hurry. We can just kiss that money goodbye. You understand that? I'll read you loud and clear. 10-4. You got the one snowman. I'm eastbound and down. Eastbound and down. Loaded up and trucking. Are we going to do what they say can't
as predicted, maybe 100 of your messages on the C Spire text line. You can be part of this conversation. 601-879-4395. I promise you, I am reading all of them. Obviously, we don't have time to get to all of them, but it's pretty divided, Grant, as has been the case with this conversation about school choice, about educational freedom in the state of Mississippi. You have people that are adamantly for it, and all of the details be damned. You've got people that are adamantly against it, and they don't want to hear anything otherwise. So let's spin this forward to January 2026. We know that this is a conversation, and we know it because the leaders in the legislature have told us that this is going to be a conversation this year. It's kind of reached almost a tipping point. Jason White has told us he's for universal school choice. He believes in parents with having the choice or having the option to give their kids what they need regardless of where they go to school. The lieutenant governor has taken a much more measured approach with this, and I think he would say a fiscally sound approach, but also recognizing that students in failing districts need better opportunities. So, I know you've talked with a bunch of legislators, as have I. I do not get the impression that on the Senate side that there is any sort of appetite for a universal choice model. And when I say appetite, I don't think the votes are there. I actually have a question about the House side because this is a very aggressive agenda item for the Speaker of the House, Jason White, and it seems to have the backing of Governor Tate Reeves as well. But one of the issues that I see arising, and this is what I'd love to hear from you on, is that you've got senators that say, I can't go back to my high-performing school districts and say that I voted for school choice, not if I want to stay in Jackson. Well, you have representatives from those same districts who are going to have the same issue. Why is it that we, I feel like, just assume that the House is going to be able to get this bill passed? Whatever this bill turns out to be.
Well, the details matter. And one of the things that makes this such a complicated issue to talk about is it's public to public is a different issue than private choice. We haven't even talked about charter schools. The issue has a lot of different facets, and every different facet of this issue has its champions and its opponents. So the devil will be in the details. And the Speaker has said there's going to be one big education package, and I'm confident that he's going to be able to craft a package that his membership can pass. Look, we've had really productive conversations with senators to find where is the common ground, where is something that they can pass. Today, I don't know what the legislation is going to look like. That's a better question for Speaker White. But I can tell you, in all the years that I've been doing this, I have not felt the kind of momentum that I am feeling right now as I hear from legislators who tell me. These are legislators who have had concerns, who have been on the fence. They they feel like there's momentum like they've never seen before. And you talk about somebody coming back and having to reconcile with a superintendent or somebody in their good district. It's not just superintendents you're going to have to reconcile with. You're going to have to deal with parents who know that this issue has reached a fever pitch, know that our surrounding states have something they don't. I looked at the numbers the other day. 37% of Mississippi citizens live in a county that borders another state. You don't think now that all of these other states have done this, that they're not going to start having friends and relatives and family members right across the line that have this array of options that we don't have. I think that's going to influence.
And on another day, I'd love for you and I to get into a conversation about how this is actually working in surrounding states. Is it working as well in Louisiana and Arkansas and Tennessee as sometimes we are led to believe? I want to leave the conversation here, if we may. Visited with the governor 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I asked him about this. He is obviously supportive of school choice. It certainly is a President Trump agenda item and something that he seems to have fallen in line with. But I asked him, I said, if you get a bill that is short of universal choice but does provide progress, is that something that you would sign? And his response, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the exact quote, was, I never want to stand in the way of good legislation.
Yep.
Oh, Grant, I think Richard may have froze up on us. And so I'm going to exit you out here. I think we're going to be parachuting out in about 30 seconds. Any final thoughts?
Well, this is why we have the fight. This is why we have the debate, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to be in the legislation. But I'm excited to watch it. Let's engage parents. Let's engage families. Be involved in the process, and we're going to get something great.
Well, Grant, thank you. You're always so informative. Grant Callen, founder and CEO Empower Mississippi. Have a wonderful weekend, my brother, and be safe heading down to the Redskin.
Thank you.
More of the best of mornings with Richard Cross next. Encore presentation of the best of mornings with Richard Cross.
Well, I can hide silent footsteps crowding me.
Welcome back. Super Talk Mississippi. It is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful day. And we're going to talk about something really fun now. And that thing that we're going to talk about that is really fun is the concept of rockabilly music. We have with us Dale Rushing, the development advisor for the Rockabilly Hall of Fame. Dale, how you doing this morning?
I am doing fantastic. I appreciate you having me on this morning.
Definitely. Well, yeah, as you know, we like music in Mississippi. I think that's fairly safe to say. Our slogan is the birthplace of America's music. Why do we feel like rockabilly is underrepresented in Mississippi?
You know, rockabilly music in Mississippi is really kind of taking a back seat. Although, out of all the genres that you can possibly say we actually can lay claim to, we probably are closer to developing rockabilly than anybody else in the United States. And it all goes back to the Black Prairie Belt music, what's called Boogie Alley. Lucille Bogey used to sing about Boogie Alley, but rockabilly is really a breakdown of just a boogie-woogie infusion with a little bit of either blues or country mixed in there, a little folkish sound, and it's that's kind of where it developed from. And we actually it was around before Elvis was in 1954. I'll put it that way. So
it's been around for a minute, and the best description I have ever heard of rockabilly music is, well, it's music you can dance to, and I think that's a great description of it. It really
Absolutely.
is.
I'm not really a genre guy. If it's good music, it's good music. But they kind of pigeonholed the rockabilly, hillbilly bop. It started off one time called hillbilly bop, and then turned into rockabilly. So.
And it kind of had a moment In the 80s, the Stray Cats came along and kind of revived interest in that style of music. Had a couple of big hits. Of course, to be fair, I think just about every type of music had a moment in the 80s at some point mixed in there. But music in a lot of ways, to me anyway, seems to have become more homogenized, at least in the popular music scene. And things like the Stray Cats aren't really out there, and they're certainly not on the charts anymore, but rockabilly is still there.
It's still there, and it's around the world. It's got a large following, and it's just kind of like you find these pockets where it gets real popular again, and that it kind of takes off. And really, in some ways, it kind of has in the United States, the Red Stray Plays are just a little bit of that rockabilly sound too, and they're kind of a popular band right now. But it's out there, and it's being followed more probably now than it was probably 15, 20 years ago. There's a lot of interest in the history of it.
And that brings me to the topic. We have the Grammy Museum. We have the Country Music Museum. We have all these different things. Could we get a rockabilly museum? Do you think there's room for that in Mississippi?
I absolutely do. In fact, at one time, there was online a Rockabilly Hall of Fame. Bob Timbers had it, and that's what we've acquired. I say we. The Hall of Fame group is acquired. And there was also another building in Jackson, Tennessee called the International Rockabilly Hall of Fame. And both those gentlemen have passed away. There's no longer a brick and mortar Hall of Fame. We are definitely looking at trying to create that, whether it be Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama. But quite honestly, it needs to be in the Mississippi side because although we had Elvis, we had tons of other people that recorded Sun Records and was involved in that rockabilly sound.
Well, do you think there's an argument to be made that a lot of the foundations of the rockabilly sound started in Mississippi?
I think there's a good argument of that. And case in point, Carl Perkins recorded in 1951 at Eastview, Tennessee on the Mississippi-Tennessee line just outside Alcorn County in Mississippi. And he recorded Wine Spodio and Good Rockin' at Night, which wasn't all the way rockabilly, but it was getting there. Still had a little bit of country sound to it. But another guy from that area, Burnsville, Mississippi up there, Pete Powell, was one of Bill Monroe's guitar pickers, and he was the first Mississippian they put on the Grand Ole Opry. But when they put him on there, they told him his guitar playing was too progressive. And if you listen to Pete Powell and Carl Perkins, you'll start hearing some similarities of how those guys picked. And Carl played in and around Alcorn County up there. In fact, he got married in Alcorn County, Mississippi. But in Gorston, you got Elvis with his influence that he as a child got influenced in Mississippi. So he was familiar with that sound. And then Scotty Moore from Jackson, Tennessee, where Carl Perkins is from. And what created that whole thing was there were some guys in Meridian, Cooney Vaughn, the Mississippi Juke Band recorded the first rock and roll songs in Hattiesburg in 1936. But the train, the Gulf Mobile, Ohio train, had a daily train that run from Meridian to Jackson, Tennessee. And those guys that were playing that boogie-woogie style music, they could hop the train in Meridian. They could be in Tupelo tonight and later in the afternoon, or be in Jackson, Tennessee, for that goes. But they permeated that corridor with that boogie-woogie sound. And the further north you went, more country sounding it became, till you got to a point where it was just rockabilly, basically.
Well, we're talking about forming a Hall of Fame for rockabilly. Is there anything else we can do to promote it and kind of keep it in the public consciousness, in the public eye? Because we have had some bands that have had big success that kind of brought some attention to it, but I think even when they did, nobody knew what the term rockabilly was. Even right. While they were right. Popular, they didn't recognize it for the distinct style that it is. Is there anything that can be done to help promote that?
Yeah, we're working on a rockabilly marker, Hall of Fame endorsed markers, like similar to the Blues Trail and the Country Music Trail in Mississippi. And so we're doing that. We're working on some murals that may kind of factor into some of that, and then just the history side of it. We're trying to educate. We're trying to do some documentaries So we've got some things in the work that will kind of help educate people along the lines of rockabilly, what it is, where it came from, how it started, and connect the dots. A lot of people like to factor in the Delta into that, but really the Delta blues really did not play that heavy of a factor into those things. It was more or less like Big Joe Williams and Bucko White and Howlin' Wolf out of the Black Prairie Belt that really had that boogie woogie sound and knew what it was, and kind of, like I said, permeated that area. And so when Elvis and Carl and those guys out of Jackson, they knew what it was, and that's the reason they picked up on it. Stan Kessler from Abbeville, Mississippi, phenomenal guy that played rockabilly music and played on a lot of hit records. And Marcus Van Story from Corinth, he was a slap bass king. He was a session musician at Sun Records and kind of influenced those sounds. So we have a lot of musicians that were at Sun Records, either engineers or musicians that influenced that Sun Records sound that we term rockabilly now.
What can be done to push this along and make sure that when the Rockabilly Hall of Fame is established again, or reestablished, I guess you would say, because I'm giving you full credit, it's going to happen, no pressure. But when that happens, what can we do to make sure it's in Mississippi?
Well, we are looking at a couple of different business models. In the old brick and mortar museum style, where you charge admission to get in, is, I won't say is as viable as it has been in the past. We may look at a whole different concept, kind of like Hard Rock Cafe had, where we may do something like a Rockabilly Roadhouse, where we have actually restaurant tied with shows and those type of things. But once we get to that point, we definitely, money makes everything work. So we definitely need as much funding as we can from the state level, and as far as that goes, the federal level, because this was a music that actually changed culture in the United States. It just wasn't a regional thing. It actually influenced music around the world. So,
yeah, that's a very good point, and you're right. Money does make the world go round. So I would also like to mention, if you hit one of those several $100 million lottery things, Dale would gladly accept a donation. But I do want to say the Rockabilly Roadhouse. I love that concept. That's an awesome idea.
Yeah. Several years ago, before Bill Luckett passed away, my band and I used to play at Ground Zero a good bit, and he and I had talked about doing a Ground Zero in Northeast Mississippi with hill country rockabilly ties as opposed to Delta blues ties. And unfortunately, he passed away, and so we kind of bypassed that idea. But we still kind of looking at some other factors that may involve this, and doing some studies and looking at it. I feel like we're getting closer than we was 10, 15 years ago. I actually got Highway 45 renamed Rockabilly Way, and it runs into Rockabilly Highway in Tennessee. So from Tupelo to Jackson, Tennessee, the road highway for old 45 is either Rockabilly Way or Rockabilly Highway, and we've got destination points that tell some really good stories about artists and venues that played, and these come probably even on down to Amory, Mississippi, just because Amory has got a phenomenal story.
I hate to interrupt you, but we're out of time. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next.
Logan Farms and
This is an encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
You never was my girl. You can burn my clothes when I'm gone. Oh, you can tell your friends just what a fool I've been, and laugh and joke about me on the phone. You can tell my arms go back into the phone.
Mornings with Richard Cross with Wonder Why Achy Breaky Heart is in your ears and in your life this morning. That's it. It's, because you need a little Billy Ray in your life. Thanks for joining us. C-Spire text line is open, 601-879-4395. Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. Glad to have our first guest this morning from the beautiful coast of the great state of Mississippi. Senator Jeremy England, representing District 51, joins us. Good morning, Senator.
Hey, good morning, Richard. Man, I wish I had grown my back of my hair out for the Billy Ray Cyrus intro there. That would have been a perfect time for a mullet.
How long would you have needed to get the mullet to grow?
It takes me a while. You'll see I've got a little facial hair this morning, and that's been about a 3-week project, just getting ready for Halloween, so I don't have to draw on my mustache for this Doc Holliday costume I'm hoping to pull off.
There you go. That is well done. Over your right shoulder, I see a globe. That's a really good thing to have in your office. I feel like I should add a globe. It's something that people used to always have in their office. Did you have to pull that out and kind of look at a map of the Middle East and be like, okay, here's Israel, and this is the route we are going to take?
I did, and a funny thing about this globe, this was something I asked for Christmas in 3rd grade, and I've still got it. My mom got it for me, so it's the Middle East on this globe is a lot different than what the Middle East looks like today. Yeah, absolutely. I've carried it with me. I had it with me in my college dorm. I mean, it's a really neat thing to have. I just like to have globes. I've always liked maps and geography, and so this is one that means something to me.
Hey, we got a lot to cover, but I just want to dive in on this trip to Israel. This, I guess, kind of envoy that you were part of that went over. We talked with you back. Oh, good grief! I guess it was almost a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago, about this pro-Israel Mississippi group that you were part of. Tell us about the visit.
Yeah, look, the visit was great, and it all started, Richard, probably, I guess it was about a year and a half, or it was before, it was like June or July of 2023. Okay. Governor Tate Reeves had the Consul General come visit him, and he invited me and another senator to come sit in on those talks. We talked about trade with Mississippi and our relationships, and I had about an hour after that to take the Consul General around the chamber, and she's the one that contacted me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing this legislative caucus? So, of course, I would. Well, then that led to this trip to Israel, which was a great trip. It was this past September. They took 5 of us from Mississippi. It was me, Representative Hank Zuber, Representative Joseph Tubb, Representative Otis Anthony, and Senator Rod Hickman. So we were the Mississippi delegation, went to Israel, and it was called 50 States, One Israel Conference. It was kind of a fact-finding mission. They brought us over to see what's going on and to show us that part of the world and what they're going through right now.
Obviously, we're a little over a week into the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. What did you see while you were there that maybe changed the way you looked at what was going on in Israel, or was something that you didn't expect to see or maybe didn't understand before you got on the plane to head halfway around the world?
Yeah, so obviously they live under constant threat there. I was speaking to a group in Pascagoula recently, and I made the analogy of if their worst enemy for the city of Pascagoula that wanted not only Pascagoula wiped off the map, but the people killed there, if they live just over in Mobile or just over the Alabama state line, that's how close they are to their enemies there, Hamas, the terrorists. And when I visited with the people of Israel, I found them to be very much like Mississippians. They were very hospitable. They would come up and talk to us, and they're very forward. Hey, what are you guys here for? What are you doing here? Oh, well, that's great. We're glad to have you here. And they were, look, they took us straight down to the Gaza envelope on the second day. We got to see where these terrorists attacked and what these families went through that were just in their homes that day. And next thing you know, they're going into their safe room, and then terrorists are coming through their neighborhood and just slaughtering and brutally murdering people and attacking them and doing things that don't belong on a radio show to women and children. And it was just horrible. And that was October 7th of 2023. It was so much like our 9/11 here in the United States for such a small country. After 9/11, we saw American flags hanging on every front door and off of balconies. And over there, the Israeli flag is like that. So they're in this very patriotic feeling, but they're not getting the same reaction from the world that we got after our terrorist attack. And that's sad.
Yeah, 8,000 square miles. I think, is the size of Israel, and if you compare that to the United States, you're talking about roughly the size of Maryland, or a little bit smaller. And Maryland we think of as a small state that we're talking about for an entire country.
That's right. And I think of New Jersey, because it's, north to south. It's a very thin, because you can stand in some parts and on a clear day, you can see the entire country. You can see, all the way to the Mediterranean Sea there. So it's very small. So the way we felt as Mississippians for an attack on the Pentagon and on New York City, they have that, and they're within an hour and a half drive at most away from the worst terrorist attack. And Rich, I'll tell you, one of the houses that we went to, hit me really hard, because in that house, they had a family that looked exactly like mine. It was a man, his wife, their 15-year-old son, and their 11-year-old daughter. Well, Richard, that's exactly the ages of my kids. Ooh. And this 15-year-old boy and his mom were killed in their safe room when terrorists threw grenades in at them when they couldn't get in the room. And all their interest was they just wanted to kill them. They were just causing terror. And the mother died pretty quickly, but the boy survived for 5 hours and before he ended up succumbing to his injuries. And the last thing he told his dad was, Dad, bury me with my surfboard. He was a big a coastal guy. So again, all of this hit me right in my heart, because again, that's my son's age. My son loves the water. My son has brown eyes. This kid had brown eyes. Seeing that and putting a face with it and a name with it, that made it very personal for what we saw, and it made me realize, Hamas has to be destroyed. They can't be allowed to continue if they're just wanting to go wreak that kind of havoc and that kind of destruction and murder on innocent people.
I'm glad you make the distinction there and you say Hamas. I was having a conversation with Bruce Pearl, the former Auburn basketball coach, a year or two ago when this was going on. And I told him, I was like, hey, help me understand what's happening. And he's a historian. And one of the things that he pointed out, he said, Richard, you have to understand that the Jews don't hate the Palestinian people. Palestinians are a beautiful people. He said it's the radicalization and the terrorist organizations. He said just your everyday Jews and your everyday Palestinians actually get along and can work together and live together and go about their daily lives, even if they don't see the world through the exact same eyes. Did you see that? Did you feel that? Did you hear that?
Absolutely. So we had there were 250 of us. They had about 12 buses for us that they were taking us around the country. Our bus driver was Palestinian, and our tour guide that was at the front was an Israeli Jew that had been there forever. And he said, this is like a family member for me. We do these things all the time. And then we went into close to the West Bank, and we talked to this lady that her and her husband have started this vineyard there, and it's really starting to expand. And they bring Palestinians into work, and so they get along with them. And one of the ladies in the community, one of the victims of the terrorist attack in the community of Berry, which is where we visited, she and two other ladies in that community would drive into Gaza and pick up people that needed specialty type hospital service that they knew they could get in Jerusalem. She was a humanitarian. She would go down and pick up Palestinians and drive them to the hospital so that they could get treatment and then drive them back. And she did this out of the goodness of her heart. She was, I forget her name, but she was a Canadian born Jew that had moved to Israel. And she was murdered just indiscriminately by Hamas on October 7th. So yes, they get along with them. And the common message that we heard over there, Richard, was if Hamas will surrender and if they'll release our hostages, we don't have to keep fighting, because they don't like what's going on over there. I mean, that's not any good for them. They've got their sons and daughters fighting in the IDF in Gaza. So it really is a focus on Hamas, a terrorist group that has entrenched themselves under schools and hospitals and within the communities of Gaza. And that's why you're seeing so many victims of this war. And it's by design by Hamas, because they know that the outcry from the global world is going to be, hey, y'all got to stop this. Innocent people are dying. And it's sad. Nobody likes to see that.
No, not at all. Senator Jeremy England is my guest. We're going to take a time out. He represents District 51. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the Gulf Coast, the upcoming session, which is getting a little closer January could be here before we know it.
That's right.
Ballot initiative, is that something that is on the mind of Jeremy England? We'll get into that and more. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for making us part of the start of your day.
Mornings with Richard Cross. Next, encore presentation of the best of mornings with Richard Cross.
Back to Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi, presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community. CommunityBank.net is where you can go to
in your
find
ears
out
and
more.
in your
Right
life
now,
this morning. That's it.
We've got with us the Executive Director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission, Jay McDaniel. Always happy to have you here, sir. And I'm going to do you a favor, let you know right now, let you off the hook. We're not going to ask for any basketball picks.
CommunityBank.net.
Probably not the week for that, is it?
Our first guest this morning from the
good morning, Dave.
But the thing is, that does lead right into one of the topics we need to talk about, and that's online gambling in Mississippi, specifically illegal online gambling, which is a problem not just here but everywhere. But of course, we're focused on Mississippi. So let's talk about that. How big of a problem?
How long would you have needed to get the mullet to grow?
It's a big problem. It is.
It takes me a while. You'll see I've got a little facial hair this morning, and that's been about a 3-week project.
It's a nationwide problem, but when we legalized
draw all of my
casino brick and mortar gaming, it helped combat that. People had somewhere to go and do it legally.
Over your right shoulder, I see a glow.
But with the advent of mobile phones and apps and the
that's a really good thing to have in your office.
For people to create gambling websites
that people used to always have in their office. Did you have to pull that out and kind of look at a map of the Middle East and be like, okay, here's Israel, and this is the route we are going to take?
And unfortunately, the illegal
I did, and the funny thing about this globe, this was something I asked for Christmas in 3rd grade, and I've still got it. My mom got it for me, so it's the Middle East on this globe is a lot different than what the Middle East looks like today. Yeah, absolutely. I carried it with me. I had it with me in my college dorm.
For whatever reason,
it's a really neat thing to have.
There were some of the wagers happened here, happened all over the nation, and I think it was the efforts of those casinos and regulators and monitoring companies. They kind of
we got a lot to cover, but I just want to dive in on this trip to Israel.
So, at the end of the day,
I guess kind of envoy that you were part of
in our state,
that went
and
over.
we're doing our best to get it out.
We
but
talked
it's very
with
difficult.
you back.
Well, and that's the problem, because to me it feels like this is the kind of amorphous problem that it's like grabbing Jell-O. You just can't seem to get a grip on it. I wouldn't think. How do you even go about that?
Yeah, look, the visit was great, and it all started
taking the efforts, and fortunately we're starting to see more and more effort from the federal government, our other state partners, other states like Nevada, Louisiana that have gaming. It's going to take us all working together, but it's very similar to the drug problem, and you fight it, and it's not going to go away. You do your best to stem it and put a spotlight on it for the consumer too, because one of the problems with illegal gambling is they put it out there.
That led to this trip to Israel, which was a great trip.
These apps, they claim to be legal, so sometimes the consumer doesn't know the law.
Representative Hank Zuber,
goes on,
Joseph Tubb,
the state must have legalized it, and so they're committing a fraud on the public too. But to go back to the root of your question, it's just going to take federal, state partners, high sentences, big,
to see what's going on,
shedding a light on it, and just really getting after the operators behind the scenes. And what's so difficult is so many of those operators operate offshore and in foreign markets, and so it makes it really difficult for us to reach into those areas and get it.
Well, and here's the question I don't want to ask, but I feel I have to. Is there any way to win
maybe change
this
the way you looked at what was going on in Israel?
It's a tough answer. I think there is, but again, it's going to take the administration, the Department of Justice. I don't know if you recall, online poker got really big in the early 2000s, and you started seeing illegal online poker just flourish. It was everywhere. And the Department of Justice finally came down, and it's called black Friday, I believe it was 2011. They went after the 3 big online poker sites, shut them down. And it didn't eliminate it, but you don't see the illegal online as much now, in states that have it,
enemies
or it's legal, you can still play it. But that took the Department of Justice going in, several U.S. attorneys' offices saying, we're cracking down on this. I think you're going to have to see the same thing here. And while the DOJ is involved in this case, this NBA case, I think they need an effort to go after the behind-the-scenes operators where a lot of these illegal wagers are placed. And I think it's going to take that to win the fight. But it's the battle right now is just
and next thing you know, they're going into a safe room
kind of effort right now is what we're dealing with.
Coming through their neighborhood.
Well, it sounds to me like everyone is kind of fighting a holding action against this, trying to hold as much ground as they can and keep it beaten back. But it's kind of like what you were talking about with online poker in 2011. It's going to take some big attacks to get this under control and beat it down. What do you think the likelihood is of that happening in the near future?
Flags hanging on every front door and
I think
off the balconies.
Scandals like this with the NBA, while we hate to see it, you're glad it's caught.
But they're not getting the same reaction from the world.
Something like that spurs action. I will say, you've got all these attorneys generals across the country that they know it's a problem, and a lot of them are talking. We have talks with our attorney general and those in other states, and there's this effort I think going on where maybe a concerted, maybe have a coalition start going after it, and I'm hopeful that that's going to happen
Maryland, we think of as a small
future, along again with federal partners. We can identify these companies all day, but the problem, because it's
north to south,
cell
very
phone
thin, because
has allowed such easy access into people's homes, and you stop one, and it's so easy for a developer to create an account, and a lot of them, they just flat out commit a fraud. They tell people, hey, this is a gambling site, put your crypto into your account, and you can bet. And there's some sites out there where you put your crypto in and they just shut it down. They just take it. So, you've got everything from just those masking as gaming companies to those that are trying to be legitimate even though they know they're not. So it's just a lot of targets out there.
They had a family that looked exactly like mine. It was a man and his wife.
Well, it is a target-rich environment, and unfortunately, I think the reason why is everyone seems to be stuck in the mindset of believing everything they read and everything they see, which is kind of what you're talking about. They put together these websites or these apps, and if it looks legit enough, well, they don't even question anything. They just go about their business. Would it be an effective way to make the licensing program, make the verification process for gambling apps and sites more visible to people? Do you think that would help?
Seeing that and
absolutely.
Putting a face with
I think
it
one of the big things here, and we're trying to work on this now, is partnering, getting Google and getting Apple and getting those that, they're using these,
has to be destroyed.
Ways to get out there, the hosting of these sites, cut it off there kind of havoc and somehow, they're getting this out into the market. And if we can't stop them,
I'm glad you make the distinction
that's where I
there.
think we target, Dave. I mean, there was a conversation with past summer that was advertising on Facebook as, hey, Hollywood Casino has legalized gaming. Click on this and you can play. And they were using our legal casino, Hollywood, to make it look like that's what it was, but it wasn't.
And one of the things
it was just the face of it. When you clicked on it, you went to their legal site. And we're working a case on that company right now without going into too much detail. We're hoping to get RICO charges, fraud charges against it. We've identified the company, but again, it's overseas.
The radicalization and the terrorist
you're right. It's just it's getting consumers knowledgeable about. Hey, if you're playing on a phone in Mississippi, you're doing it illegal. You may not know that, but you need to know that. And then if you know that you're still doing it, to be aware the day's going to come where we're going to probably shut that company down, and your money's going to be stuck there.
Absolutely.
So it's about consumer education.
250 of us. They had about 12 buses for us. They were taking us around the country. Our
heavy prosecution team to do our best. But at the end of the day, what we want, we have
was an
licensed, regulated market of good casino operators here in Mississippi. That's where we want people to go.
All the time. And
but unfortunately, some people choose to do the convenient thing and play on their phone.
Her and her husband have
well, and I
really
see an easy solution to a large part of this problem that could never get implemented, and it's this.
One of the ladies in the community,
before your app appears on the App Store, on Google Android, on Apple, on any of them, it has to be certified, and that certification has to be officially checked before the app is allowed to go live. And then all of a sudden, all of these nonsense apps never make it out there to be downloaded. But good luck getting Google and Apple to agree to that, right?
And then drive them back. And
and when I say federal, that's part of it, Dave, is that, the DOJ, not just from a criminal aspect going over after the operators, but we have, licensed companies in our country, start putting the squeeze on them to follow the, like you said, licensing efforts to make sure, because these apps, they target underage, they don't care about responsible gaming, but the things that we try and put in place, that's the Wild West.
Sons and daughters fighting in the IDO.
Illegal sites. So, you're exactly right.
And it really is a focus on Hamas.
2025, 2026, we're going to start seeing a lot more coming to fruition in that area.
Of Gaza.
Well, we're up against the break. Can you hang around through the break? Because I'd love to get your take on what you'd like to see happen in the upcoming session of the Mississippi Legislature. Can you stick around?
Is going to be, hey, y'all got to stop this.
Fantastic. We're talking to Jay McDaniel, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. I am just quite frankly shocked you're not up on the young people's lingo these days. When I said, could you stick around, the Executive Director of the Gaming Commission should have said, bet.
A little closer.
Bet.
January could be here before we know it.
Yeah, we got to work with you, but you're getting there. You're doing fine.
My kids would have not let me
get into that and more.
That's a fair point. Sometimes we just can't pull it off, right? We'll continue talking to Jay McDaniel after this on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Keep it here.
More of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross next.
This is where the story of your state gets told each day. We're proud to cover the Magnolia State like nobody else. SuperTalk Mississippi.
An encore presentation of the best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
Hard-working man, I wear a steel hard hat. I can ride rope, a hammer and paint, do things with my hands that most men can't. I can't get ahead no matter how hard I try. I'm getting really good at barely getting by.
Welcome back. Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Dave Hughes, Jay McDaniel, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission, on with us, and we are just over 2 months away from the next session of the Mississippi Legislature. If you had your wish list, if you had that magic lamp and you had your 3 wishes, what would you like to see happen in this session of the legislature in regards to the Gaming Commission and the things you deal with?
Yeah, so from the perspective of the Gaming Commission, just as an agency, the legislature has always been good to us. I've got 3 really great commissioners who are, the goal here is to make sure Mississippi is a business-friendly environment for our operators, for the companies that run our casinos. Our regulatory environment is very stable. So honestly, from our day-to-day, what we do, we are given the tools we need to do our job. So when it really comes down to, as far as a wish list for me and our agency, we don't really get too much into that. But what I would say is, I have friends in the legislature, just listen to what the operators tell them about, what can help them do business better, what can help our taxpayers from a gaming standpoint, what's going to put, more money into our state, the money that we receive, what gets it in the right place. But those are big policy decisions really that are up to the legislature to make. I mean, it's been no secret. Mobile sports betting has been the big topic the last few years. It's passed in the House, has not passed in the Senate. And as a result of that, there have been some other bills that have kind of gotten tangled up in that. So There is one bill, Dave. We were talking about illegal gaming. Last year, the Senate passed a bill that increased criminal penalties on illegal gaming operators. And I encouraged that one. I did say, look, that would help us a lot, increasing them to felony penalties. But it died kind of again because it got tangled up in all the other gaming stuff. So I would like to see that passed. It would help us. And again, our state prosecutors, our partners in going after that. There was another bill that Lynn Fitch supported about taking payments from jackpots from people that owed child support. That was a bill that I know the Attorney General's office was behind. Again, it did not pass. The Attorney General's office and the DHS really pushing that. So I don't think those would be good bills. So those two, I don't really have a problem with. I think that would be helpful to our state. But at the end of the day, the big policy decisions on gaming, there are a few out there I think the legislature just needs to consider, and then they make that decision on what's best for our state.
Would they be able to make it, and I think you kind of answered this question already, would they be able to make it easier for you and law enforcement to go after these illegal operators and bring an end to some of this with some of those policy decisions in the legislature?
Yes, certainly the criminal bills. So the Gaming Control Act legalizes gambling, but then we just have our basic criminal statutes that sets the penalties. And many of the penalties for illegal gambling is just misdemeanors and minimum fines. So even if we were to go after one of these illegal operators, what are they scared of? They're making millions of dollars. They'll write a check tomorrow if they're hauled into court. So yes, increasing those criminal penalties to felonies with extensive prison time, higher fines. Since it didn't pass last year, the cases we're developing right now, we're going under RICO statutes because those are felony statutes. But RICO cases can be harder to build, take more time. So it would certainly make it easier if that criminalization, if the penalties were increased. And I'm hoping it did pass. It didn't come out of a gaming committee. It came out of a judiciary committee. But again, kind of got stalled last year. So I'm hopeful that maybe this year that will pass, and that will certainly help with our efforts.
Well, it's kind of a separate thing. It is a separate thing, but they've had the same problem with the Mississippi Lottery Commission. They actually had a pop-up on their website a couple of weeks ago reminding people if you think you're playing Mississippi Lottery on your phone, you're not. That's not legal in the state because they are facing those same problems. All types of gambling and wagering has this problem right now in Mississippi, and I think it's going to take big action to get it under control.
Yeah, you're right. This doesn't just affect our, we have our legalized, our 26 casinos, but you have the lottery that's affected. Every dollar someone puts in an illegal is one the state's, not benefiting from. The Choctaw, tribe, which operates Pearl River Resort and their casinos, it affects them. And so that's what's good is we've got a lot of voices in this that understand this is a problem. And the more it impacts, hopefully, again, it helps with our efforts to talk to prosecutors and our partners to go after it. But you're right, the lottery mimics are out there just like the ones that mimic our casinos.
It's a widespread problem because no matter what good thing you come up with, some jerk will be along shortly to turn it into a bad thing for themselves for a while. That's what we're fighting against. It's the eternal battle, Jay, and all we can do is keep fighting the good fight like you're doing. Jay McDaniel, Executive Director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. I appreciate you taking your time to be with us today and go through some of this. Keep up the good fight, and if you need me to come kick anybody in the shins when you catch them doing it, I'll be glad to do it. I will volunteer, free of charge. I'll kick shins for you.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that.
Thursday goes to show I've got Friday on my mind.
Thank you for listening to the Best of Mornings with Richard Cross.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.